Hey, y'all. Welcome to the Reckless Optimist podcast. My name is Megan. I'm a family nurse practitioner with a deep passion for mental health. On this show, we showcase guests who have shown tenacity, grit, mental strength, and who embody the word resilience. A quick disclaimer before we start. This show is not a substitute for mental diagnosis or treatment. We do recommend that if you're struggling with your own emotional well-being, you see a mental health provider. I'm so excited that you guys are here. Let's get into it. Hey, everyone. Today on the podcast, we have Bret. I met Bret last summer in Montana at a health retreat, and he is just a really cool guy. Very humble, very interesting. I really enjoyed this episode with him. Bret is part of the LGBTQ community, and we do talk about his experience with coming out as a gay person in his early 20s. He grew up in the Mormon church and what that experience was like for him. He eventually developed an alcohol use disorder through his later 20s and ultimately developed an unhealthy relationship with hiding his alcohol and that kind of whole guilt shame spiral. He is definitely someone that shares the vulnerabilities of his story, and ultimately he came through it, and to hear what he's doing now is amazing. I know you guys are going to love this episode. Let's get into it. Hey everyone, help me welcome Bret to the podcast.
Thanks, Megan. How are you?
I'm so good. I'm so excited that you're here. So me and you met at Sober Summer Camp. I think I've had like 5 or 6 guests on. Hopefully I'll have the whole camp on eventually. But we met in Montana. Was it 2 summers ago?
Last summer.
Last summer. That's right. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love that retreat. We were just talking before we jumped on about how we're both going to be back there in a month.
Yeah. Yeah. It's coming right up.
I'm so excited. Are you going to camp or are you going to stay in the cabin?
I'm cabin.
Okay, yeah. I'm too girly to camp. I would love to be a girl that camps, but I just need a bed and a blanket and warmth. So
Yeah, I hear you.
it's so funny because I have like big aspirations to one day hike the AT. And if I really want to do that after my kids are grown, I would need to learn how to camp.
Yeah, there's time for that.
Yeah, exactly. So we are going to start our episode out with a quote like we do each time. And the quote for your episode is from a book called 1,000 Wasted Sundays by Victoria Van Stone. Have you ever heard of her or that book?
I have not.
So she has a whole sober program called Sober Awkward. She's from Australia. And I loved this book. It's a really cool book, quit lit book about the cycle of binge drinking and anxiety. And she's a comedian. Like she has a funny twist to it. So when I read this quote, I wrote it down and I am using it for your episode. So the quote goes, "Being sober is something I once never imagined possible. Now that I am, I trust myself. I have my back. I feel no weight upon me, no shame, no fear. No apprehension." What does that make you feel?
Well, it's interesting because that my whole story revolves around shame. But yeah, not having that shame anymore and actually having my own back and being confident in myself is probably the biggest thing I've gained in my sobriety. So that's actually it's an awesome quote. I love it.
Yeah. Yeah. The shame, they say shame is the 1,000-pound gorilla in the consulting room. You know, it can feel heavy on your chest, literally physically feel heavy. But yeah, I really liked this quote. I feel like that self-trust was one of the best gifts I got back in sobriety, because when I was in active addiction, I'm not sure if you did this too, but I would make so many promises to myself and then break all of them. The next morning I would wake up and I would say, I'm never drinking again, or I'm only going to have one, or I'll never speak to my family like that again. I'll never act in that way again. And then constantly break these promises to myself. So I had zero integrity. I was a flake in my own eyes. And once you get out of that cycle and sober, you can rebuild that trust, and it takes time, but you can build that confidence back in yourself.
Yeah, no, for sure. That tracks.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, so we were talking before we jumped on that I don't know your story. So during camp, the women and men are separated when we have our shares. So I'm really excited to hear yours. So wherever you feel comfortable, just take us back.
All right. Yeah, so I'm going to just preface with like I have ADHD. I can have this like I'm back and forth. I'm everywhere. So hopefully it will all make sense.
Yes.
But we're going to do our best.
Yes. I believe in you.
So, I mean, if we go back to like, just a quick little background on how I was raised. I was raised in a small town in Utah, about an hour south of Salt Lake City. Was born and raised there and raised in the Mormon church. I had 2 older sisters and a single mother, really, just as my parents got divorced when I was 1. So I was just raised by my mom and my two sisters, and then the Mormon thing. So growing up, there was no alcohol in the house because that was against the Mormon church, and So there was never really, I never saw anyone drink really because my family wasn't around any of that. But I also wasn't like spoken to about it. It wasn't really a conversation of ever like, don't drink. I mean, it was just part of, I guess the church told me that, not necessarily my family so much, because it was just out of the question. So really all through school, grade school, high school, I didn't drink. I wasn't necessarily tempted to. I saw like I had a sister who was involved in some, well, both my sisters were drinkers when they were in high school and they'd party and I'd watch my mom have to go and rescue them or pick them up from the party and then watch her pain and what she went through trying to be a single mom and trying to raise us three kids. And so I was just a big mama's boy and I was the youngest. And so I would see that and I was just like, I won't do that. I don't want to be that to her. So I kind of was just a good boy growing up, right? Then I had this gay thing though. I'm gay, and so I trying to reconcile that with the Mormon churches was super hard. I would pray and I would pay my tithing and I would go to church and I would basically just pray that I would pray to not be gay. I would just wanted to be normal. I just wanted to be accepted. I just wanted to, and I couldn't tell anyone about this because it was wrong, and everything I had learned in church told me how bad it was. So I never really had much self-confidence maybe growing up, and I didn't have anywhere to an outlet. So I basically just listened to a lot of angry heavy metal music and a lot of, I was kind of just angry and sad, I guess. But I made it through high school, and so at that point was right around when it was like 99 when I graduated high school. That was like when AOL was coming out. So I didn't have any gay friends, right? So I had gotten on chat rooms, met people in Salt Lake. So about an hour away, I was able to kind of go up and meet people, and just to talk to people who actually could relate with me was huge, right? And it helped me meet people. But then in meeting people, eventually that led to me moving up to Salt Lake City, and up there, I was able to be a little more open, be myself. No one knew what I was doing, but I was kind of just living the normal life. However, when I did meet people, there was alcohol involved at that point. I was probably 19 or 20 when I first had my first drink, and I had a fake ID at the time because some friends had gotten me one, and so we were able to get into the gay club, and there was only a few of them ever, in Salt Lake at the time. And so I had kind of started when I was about 20, probably underage, but it was never anything crazy, and it was controlled. I even worked at the bar for a while. So all through high school, I mean, all through college, I would call it just normal drinking. And then we had a bunch of, in college, I also, we had a house where there was like seven of us roommates, and it's kind of like Real World reversed. There was six gay guys and one straight girl, and it was just this massive house, and we pretty much knew everyone in Salt Lake. So we had a lot of big, crazy parties at the house. But again, normal drinking. Fast forward to all that. I was 23 and I moved out to Fort Lauderdale where I am now with work. And I moved out here because there's a really big gay scene. And at that point, I'd already come out. At that point, everything, my family had accepted me, which was good. And so there wasn't really anything shame there was nothing at that point like that was a problem, I guess. When I get to Fort Lauderdale, I get a little bit more involved in the gay scene. In Utah, I worked for the Ritz-Carlton hotel company and had a friend who worked for JetBlue. And so we were able to be each other's companions, like domestic partners. And so I was able to fly whenever I wanted and then stay at a hotel for $50. But I was doing that with a lot of the gay parties would have. And it was more of a club drug stuff. It was more like party drugs. And so like I did get into that a little bit. But again, it was just weekends or once in a while. So anyway, back to Fort Lauderdale. And then here, I kind of did the same thing. Now I was in my mid 30s, and the partying thing took longer than a couple days to recover. And so that kind of stopped. But then I think I didn't have an escape anymore. I wasn't going out and doing any of that stuff. So I began to drink, I think, more at that point. But I really think from that time on, from my mid 30s to my about 40, so maybe 35 to 40-ish, it felt like is when things kind of started to get a little more heavy into drinking. I'd come home from work, make a drink. My husband, he also enjoyed martinis, so we would make martinis almost every night. But it became a thing where I'd come home at 2:30 and make a drink, right? And so that kind of became a regular thing. And my husband he's a transplant. He's a transplant coordinator, a nurse. And at the time he was liver transplant. So he had lots of experience in that. And he would call me out a lot on that I was drinking too much. Or even though he'd have one, I would have more. And he'd call me out on that. But then also at the same time, he didn't enable me, but he'd he knew I enjoyed to drink. So he'd get me beer of the month clubs, for my birthdays and for Christmas and for whatever. So I'd have beers coming, I'd have alcohol coming, but then I would drink one, for example, like on a night. And if I had more than one, he'd be like, "Is that your second one? Or are you having another one?" And so then it just kind of was like, it became where I wanted to hide that, 'cause I didn't want to have to answer to him every time I wanted to drink, right? That would just make me more upset. And so, I think so that was kind of where we were, but then also as a couple, we started going out more. And again, he's older than I am, so as we both got older, we just found it much easier to go down to the bar and have drinks here. And here, there's always a happy hour, or there's always you get a chip, you buy one, you get one free. And our pool guy was a bartender, so we'd go to his bar and he'd pour me a martini in a 20-ounce glass, which is just all 20 ounces of vodka with a splash of olive juice, right? And then, and my husband's just a normal drinker, so he'd drink like a half of that, and I would drink mine plus his plus another, and it would just. But then it became, I would come home and I'd want more, and my husband would just pass out like a normal person. He'd have a drink, he'd pass out because it was enough. That's all he needed. For me, it was like the party's getting started. Like I want more. So it became almost, it was hard because I'd come home from that and I'd just want more, and I wouldn't be able to because he'd be watching, right? Well, at that point, I kind of started hiding bottles. And I hid bottle just like one, and then that became, then it was like it would be in that room where I wanted to have an extra drink, and so I'd have to hide one in a different room. So I'd have one almost in every room. But my biggest thing was I had one in the kitchen, underneath the kitchen, and by the spices. And there'd be times where I'd be in cooking and he'd be on the couch watching TV. I'd be in cooking and I'd bend down to get a spice and be able to take a shot, and just got really crazy. Also, at this time, it would have been about COVID time. So it's 2020 March, and get sent home from work and working from home. And we had just gotten two puppies. We were having the roof replaced. We were having construction done on the house. And then I'm trying to work from home when I never have before. And so super stressed out. And there was alcohol. We had a whole liquor cabinet full of stuff. And so I'd start drinking during the day, or like right half hour before it was off the clock time. And my husband would come home and smell it on my breath and give me a hard time. And I would just deny it. I would try and eat onions and brush my teeth and do all sorts of crazy things. But he knew, right? But he just didn't want to maybe argue or make it a big deal. But he almost always knew. And I would, yeah, looking back, I don't know. It's crazy, but the real problem, and I'm not blaming COVID, and I'm not blaming the gay thing. I'm not blaming any of those things. That's one of my biggest things I've learned in sobriety is no one or nothing has forced me to drink. That was I did that to try and cope with whatever that I couldn't cope with, or I didn't want to feel anything, or just wanted to check out. And that was a lot easier than dealing with whatever responsibilities that I had to do. But yeah, during COVID is when it really amped up and became drinking with my coffee in the morning. I'd have Jaeger with my coffee, and then I would continue having it all day. And it was a meal replacement. I was drinking so much, and I was battling, trying to go to the liquor store, to different ones. We all go to different liquor stores so they don't start knowing who we are. And I was trying to keep my liquor cabinet stocked enough that he wouldn't notice how much I was drinking. But then again, bottles hidden everywhere. So, and it became pretty bad to where I had the shakes, and I had all sorts of throw up in the morning, signs like that. I never had real consequences, like never like super hangover, never super sick, never any DUIs, never any problems with anything. And that was kind of a curse, is not having the hangovers and everything. The worst was maybe throwing up in the morning, but a lot of times I'd chalk that up to something else. I never blamed the alcohol. I never even thought about it. It was always something else, right? But looking back, and all those things, the shaking was definitely a withdrawal symptom and I would fix it with a drink, of course. And then one day, I come home from work, and my husband had like about 6 bottles sitting out on the kitchen counter, and he was back in the bedroom. And so I walked in, and I was like, shit, like the gig is up. And it was the scariest thing in my life, but it was also the best, the feeling of relief was huge. Like you were saying about just feeling, I'm like, thank God that like he knows now we can talk about it. And so went into the room, and I'm like, I guess we need to talk. And he's like, yeah, we do. And it wasn't pretty. But what happened is basically, the next day I called my insurance company and got into an IOP program. That next day, he actually sent me a podcast link. And I don't know how I even found the podcast, but it happened to be Recovery Elevator, which is how I've met you. And And so he sent me just an episode. I listened to it. I joined RE that same day and then did the IOP that following Monday. That was 12 weeks. And then I did another 6 months of what they call aftercare, which was once a week for an hour. And then here I am now, and I'm in RE and still sober. So that's kind of where I'm at. That's kind of where alcohol took me. I'm clean, sober, happy now, and that's kind of the story in a nutshell.
Yeah, no, I think it's awesome. So that last day that you drank, so how much time do you have? How many years sober?
My sobriety date now is February 22nd, 2024.
2020.
Yes. So now, yeah, so a year and a couple months, right?
Yes, that's
Yeah.
awesome. Yeah. And once you get past that 1 year mark, I don't know, that was such a big milestone for me to have a year.
Yeah, for sure.
So that's awesome. I have some follow-up questions for you. One thing I've noticed is you do recover out loud, and I love that you do that. My question for you there is you also had mentioned you had come out as a gay person. What was harder for you, coming out as a gay person or coming out sober?
Coming out sober,
Yeah.
for sure.
I've heard that before. That's actually harder.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's because I feel like, well, I mean, I know from being a gay person that it's nothing that I chose, right? So it was just who I am. Although that is hard to let people know because there was people who shut me out and there was rejections and all those things. But it feels like an alcoholic person. It feels like there's a choice involved, and that could be up for debate, I guess. But it was definitely harder to come out as a sober, as an alcoholic.
Yeah, that's interesting perspective. So when did you decide to come out sober? How many months were you when you did?
I think I was about 4 months maybe is all.
Okay. Okay. How was that received?
Really well, actually. I what I did is I did a podcast for Recovery Elevator, and I was about 3 months sober at that time, and so only my husband knew at that point, and maybe a couple of other really close friends. And then I was home for Christmas in December, so it was like 3 months after. And I basically just sent the link to my family, and I said, I want you guys to listen to this, and then we can talk about it later. And they were sad, they were shocked. They were in Utah, I'm in Florida. They didn't know anything at all that there was a problem. They didn't see any of it. They didn't hear about any of it. But it was met with nothing but support.
Yeah. Yeah, I had somewhat of a similar experience. Not that I did the podcast to come out sober, but I did come out sober when no one knew I had an issue at all. Like I, similar to you, had hid my issue from everyone, from every single person. So, yeah. And so when I did come out sober, I think at first, not that it wasn't well received, I think people might have just been in shock and didn't know what to say, But since then, most people have been supportive. There are some people, I think, depending on their background or what they're going through, where maybe they just don't understand it or they don't know how to relate to it. Or if they have their own drinking issue themselves, it holds a mirror up to them and they just kind of block what's going on. But everyone's on their own personal journey when it comes to this. So I would never, ever come from a place of like self-righteousness or judgment on anyone else's journey.
Yeah, for sure.
What surprised you about sobriety when you were, drinking? And did you ever even think about what a sober life would look like?
As soon as this construction's done, as soon as the dogs are house trained, as soon as we go back to work, I'll be able to do that, which never would have been able to happen. I was definitely couldn't have done it alone. But I think what surprised me is the connections, the friends I've made. And I also drank alone. I guess that was probably because I didn't want anyone to see how much I was drinking. But those friends that I wouldn't even say lost, but the friends that aren't friends anymore because I don't go to the bars and drink with them anymore. I have so many more friends that are such quality and more. It's not just like the quantity. There's so many friends that I have met, and the camping trip that we do, the local AA stuff that I do around here, the fellowship, camaraderie, the support. I didn't expect any of that. I didn't expect people to be so genuine and to be so loving and caring. And it's been pretty amazing.
Yeah. The Sober Summer Camp is a 5-day retreat in Montana. And I've gone for 4 years. And the people that are at that camp know more about me from 5 days of being there than some of my lifelong friends, because the connections you make in sobriety are at a completely different level. Yeah. I wanted to ask you about the IOP. So for listeners, that's what's called an intensive outpatient program. So different from inpatient rehab, it's an outpatient availability to people that are going through different addictions. So my question for you there with the IOP is, what in the IOP was the thing that helped you get sober the most?
So yeah, in that it's different, and like you were describing, it's different in the fact that there's also the court ordered people to be there. So there were some people there that were just kind of nasty to the counselors. And honestly, when I was in it, I thought it was so silly because the homework and the assignments and the notes were just basically very elementary. But I think we need that at the beginning because we've just lost all sense of everything. And so even though I found it silly, like it ended up being probably exactly what I needed, and probably that on top of RE at the same time, exactly what I needed. And we got tested for random testing. And this was three days a week, 3 hours a day. So it was a Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday for 3 hours. And so outside of the testing, it was just, I had this lifeline for the first time ever. My husband kind of gave me an ultimatum too. It was kind of like, I mean, if you want to drink, that's fine, but I'm not going to stay with you, kind of a thing. So there was that, but it was just the fact that he knew now, and that I could be open about it, and just having that availability, and that was exactly what I needed. And so being able to go to ILP and see the other people in the group also that looked like me, and you have these businessmen come in and these people, and you think there's no way they have a problem, and then they're in there for a heroin addiction or an opiate addiction of some sort, so it was just put us all on the same level playing field. And I guess it just helped me realize that it's people just like me.
Yeah, absolutely. It doesn't discriminate. It affects anyone and anyone anywhere and no matter what profession. The IOP that you did, I'm assuming that was a 12-step program. Is that right?
No, what they didn't, it wasn't a 12 step. Yeah,
Coursework and stuff. So you had mentioned AA. Do you do that in your town now?
I do.
Yes.
Yeah. Have a
That's
sponsor, do AA here, a couple times a week. Yeah, it's been super helpful.
that's awesome. Have you sponsored anyone yet?
I have yet to sponsor someone. I'm getting there. I'm almost ready to take that on, I think.
Yeah, I know. I have thought about it. I had a sponsor. I did AA for about a year and I pop in once a year and I get my chip. And I ended up finding Recovery Elevator. That's how me and you know each other, which is an online support group that has an app that's really cool and a community. But yeah, I mean, AA was awesome. It's readily available in every corner of the world. It's free. They have women groups, they have men groups, and the structured discipline patients that it provides for patients with the steps that they have. So did you go through all 12 steps?
Yeah, and I did, and I did 12 steps with a sponsor in RE. Actually, was my first way through, and then now I'm working with a local sponsor, and I'm doing them again just because I think with each sponsor you can learn something different, and they kind of do it differently, and then. There's just some other things. I had a straight sponsor when I was in RE, and now I'm in like you said, how they have niche groups. My local group here is an LGBTQ group, which I find is just a little. I find all recovery spaces super safe because most people are very accepting because they've been in some pretty shitty situations and they can accept other people's positions they've been in. But there's something that's just a little safer for me to when I'm sharing and I say the word husband or I say gay even, like I don't feel like everyone else there is also gay, so they're not going to say anything about that. And I've been in straight groups where I've not shared for that reason, and it's probably my internal, thing. It's my own issue, but yeah, I find it more easy for me to share if I'm in a group.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. I had a similar situation, not the same as you, but where I'd popped in, a few counties over to this one group and it was all men in a church basement. And I felt very unsafe. Not that they were ever going to harm me or anything like that, but just emotionally unsafe. And I ended up finding a women's group, and that was a much safer space for me because you are sharing vulnerable pieces of your life and those connections that you want to make. So the safer, the better. I think that's great. My question for you about the 12 steps is, which of the steps was the hardest?
I'm going to say 4.
Yeah.
And I know that gets said a lot, but that's where I've been stuck for the last 6 months again. Yeah, 4.
Tell the listeners what number 4 is, step 4 is.
Just the immoral inventory. So you're going through and picking out everything wrong that you have with yourself, and that you hold resentments towards someone for what reason, and what your part is in it. So there's a lot of, it doesn't feel great going back a lot of times and remembering what I have done or what I've done, not in the best light, maybe.
Yeah. Yeah, that one's hard for a lot of people. I struggled with 4. I also struggle with the first step, which is I am powerless. I really struggled with that one. We could do a whole podcast episode on why I struggle with that. I think it's a control thing, which is probably what got me into this situation in the first place. But my other questions for you is, how has your relationship changed with your husband in sobriety?
It's gotten so much better. I mean, there was, when I was drinking, when I was using, when I was during all that, I couldn't remember, arguments. I couldn't remember what I told him about my day. I couldn't remember what I ate for lunch. Like I couldn't. And so for me to just, I had no confidence in that. And then he'd call me out and be like, we've already talked about this. Or like, do you remember what you did last night? And that brings me to something, and I'm just going to bring it up real quick because it was the scariest moment probably ever. And it wasn't my rock bottom moment, but it was something that I had, in the morning, he had come in and asked me if I went swimming last night. And I was like, no. And I just denied it and denied it. And I'm like, no, I didn't. He's like, well, why is there a wet pair of swimming trunks at the door? And I'm just like, my heart just sunk. I'm just like, I don't know. Like, I don't know. Like, I didn't go swimming. I was so sure because I just didn't remember doing it, right? But someone did because there's wet shorts at the door. So, I went back through like my security cameras, and sure enough, you see me in the pool for a good 45 minutes and, swimming, and had my iPad with me. And like, and then that's the other thing. On top of that drinking, I'd gotten to a point where I could not sleep. My anxiety was crazy. So I would take an Ambien on top of the drinking, on top of a Benadryl, on top of a Xanax and melatonin. Like, and so I should be dead. That is like, and I did that. And that's when I went swimming basically. So for me to see myself on that camera and have to realize what happened, and I could have drowned probably and not known about that. Right. Cause I just really didn't remember it until I saw it. And then even then I couldn't remember it. But I had proof. But the relationship is much better now. He knows, he can see the work that I've put in. He can tell that there's been changes. I can talk about my feelings. I can talk about, even if I'm having like I really kind of want to drink right now. I can tell him that. I can feel safe that doing that. He's trusting me again. I mean, he had many reasons to not trust me for many years because I was in this cycle we've been together. It'll be 20 years in about a week.
Wow.
So it's been a long time.
Yeah.
For about 18 of those, I was kind of doing a cycle of abusing drugs or alcohol. And it was all revolved around me not loving myself, me not taking care of myself, or thinking that I was worth anything, or that I've already screwed it up. Like, why worry about it now? But I would also use drugs and alcohol to make myself not remember, or to get to myself to a position where I could do those things and not feel as bad about it maybe until the next day. And then I would be feeling like crap, and then I'd want to drink or use more because I didn't want to feel it. I didn't want to feel like what I'd done. Just a bad cycle for a long time.
Yeah, I can track with what you're saying. It's the hamster wheel, the guilt, shame hamster wheel, because I would act in a certain way that was out of alignment with who I knew I was at my core. And then the next morning, that guilt, oh my gosh, especially because I was a mom a young mom and had young kids. And I think being a mother is one of the most important things to me, being a good mother. And I was failing at that. And so I had no self-worth, no confidence in myself. But to be able to pull yourself out of that and, like you're doing now, rebuild yourself stronger than before, like that's the cool part of the story to me.
For sure.
Yeah. I love that. So that first year, a lot of people will have issues with how to overcome cravings. What do you feel helped you the most that first year to prevent, or if you had a craving, how did you get through that?
So I would listen to music's always been a big thing for me, as it was when I was younger and like angry. Like I said, that was a big outlet. So I put on some music. It can definitely put me in a mood, whether it be country or hard rock or just some nice little, soundscape music. Physical activity, I'm not great at that. Honestly, at the beginning, this first year, that whole just don't drink became a thing, and where I was expecting to lose weight kind of, because I was like, oh, I'm not drinking my calories anymore. But I definitely have replaced, I've got a sugar thing where I trying to get that under control. I've gained probably 20 pounds since I've stopped drinking. So the idea of physical activity is there. It used to be better than it was, and I don't know, that has nothing to do with drinking or not drinking, but mostly it was music or journaling too, writing stuff down and just getting it out. Even if I toss it out afterwards, it's just getting it outside myself. There's something healing about that for me.
I love that. I'm a big fan of journaling. It's funny. I hear that a lot about the weight gain, that, people think you're going to slim down, but most people do not. Most people actually gain weight in sobriety. I gained 30 pounds, maybe even more. And I didn't even care. I was just like, stay sober, girl. Like, we'll worry about this later. And yes, I had a sugar addiction as well. And that's taken me 5-6 years to get a hold on. So my advice is like, you don't have to have it all figured out now. You know what I mean? If sugar is helping you stay sober, then stay on the sugar until you can. It's that whole chasing two rabbits idea. Just chase one rabbit for now, and then you can chase the second one.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah. You had mentioned anxiety, and I wanted to ask you, so I had a horrible anxiety I think I have natural anxiety, but you throw drinking in, and I had literal panic disorder. And so, kind of to correlate this to some of the work Annie Grace has done, she talks about alcohol use disorder like a bug bite, right? So the alcohol gave you the bug bite, and it feels good to scratch the itch, but you would have never had the bug bite if you hadn't drinking. And that's kind of how anxiety was for me. Like the alcohol was causing the anxiety. You take away the alcohol, and my anxiety was very well controlled. Do you feel like you had a similar experience with yours?
Yes. Yeah. Because when I'm in it, like again, I was drinking too because I was feeling anxious. I would drink, right? And then it would maybe like numb that for a minute, but then it would just continue until I drank more and more and more, right? And I was abusing my Xanax with my alcohol for sure. So like it was a very slippery slope in my recovery, even still, like to this day. I eventually came clean with my doctors that I'd lied to for many years and my therapists, how much I was really drinking or using and how I was abusing the drugs or the alcohol, even the prescription drugs. So it was like, I have since been prescribed Xanax again because I've proven that I can do this and that I'm doing it the right way. It was funny. I was on a chat one time and I was talking about that where I had to take a Xanax and I was so upset with myself thinking that I had kind of broken my sobriety, that I'd screwed up, and someone, just cleverly kind of was like, well, was the prescription written for you, and did you take it as directed? And it's like, yeah. And they're like, then you didn't screw up, and plus you didn't drink. You were having an anxiety attack. You needed it. You took it. That's it. And that's true. So I mean, but yeah, the anxiety's been much less, but that drinking anxiety, that was a real thing.
Yeah, I think that's what keeps me sober is I never want to feel like that girl. I mean, I would have full-blown panic attacks. My hands would go numb. It would feel like my throat was closing. I felt impending doom, like the world was ending and I was dying. It's honestly to this day the scariest feelings I've ever had in my life, and they are literally created by my own brain.
Wow. Yeah.
So yeah, very thankful to come through. And I still have a little bit of natural anxiety, but it's much more controlled now. What do you feel has been your biggest blessing this past 16 months?
I think just my sense of peace, of almost, I don't want to say accomplishment, but it is an accomplishment, but I don't want to ever say like I got it, like that whole thing. But like I think this is the first time I've ever been able to stick with something. And that's where the ADHD comes in. I start a million projects and I never ever finish. And I don't think I'll ever be finished with this, but this is really hard, like what we're doing with alcohol. And I've even talked to multiple people who have had cross addiction, drug addictions, and or like heroin and crystal meth and alcohol addiction, but then talked about how the alcohol is harder than the drugs were, and I think that's so true because the alcohol is everywhere. You can't escape it, right? You can escape a drug dealer because they're not just selling them at 7-Eleven, right? I mean, they're not just everywhere, but alcohol is at a sporting event, a concert, it's everywhere. I think but just knowing that I've been able to do that makes me feel like you said, maybe now I can eventually chase this weight rabbit, maybe I can eventually chase these other things and actually stick with them. So I think I'm just proud of myself for
Yeah.
coming where I've came, getting here.
As you should be. As
Yeah,
you should
thank
be.
you.
I'm proud of you too. And
Thank
I'm
you.
proud of you for being open about it. Not everyone, maybe that's not their journey, and that's totally fine. I respect if you want to keep it quiet or if you want to be openly sober. However, I think people that are open about it, I have such respect for that because you're helping so many people by sharing your story. And not everyone's going to understand or track with every single thing that you're saying, but pieces of your story ultimately gives people hope. And that's what drags people out of the dark hole that they're in.
For sure.
So I know you're very social and you travel a lot. And so what's been the best way to navigate like social events and traveling being a sober person? Because I think those two things are very hard for people.
So yeah, I'm super blessed in the fact that my husband gave up drinking with me
Wow.
because he just didn't. He's like, I don't need to, and I felt bad for taking that away from him, and he's like, I don't want to, like I don't need it. Like I mean, maybe it would sound good, but I don't want to without you. And so that's probably been, and I know not everyone has that I know I've been through this long enough to see where partners or spouses do still drink, and I think that would be harder. So I am grateful that he chose to do that with me. And then outside of that, I went on a cruise about 3 months into my sobriety as well, and it was like 18 nights. So it was a long one. But like what I did was I went to the Friends of BLW meeting, right? They had them on the boat, they're like AA group. So I went to them, and just there was only like maybe 7 people, but those 7 people became. I still talk to one of them to this day, and that was like years ago. And so just knowing that the AA is out there, whether you want to be an AA person or not, you could go to a meeting and you can find a meeting any corner, anywhere USA or anywhere in the world, really. So I think having that, and then having just an exit plan for things, like if I'm going to go somewhere where I mean, like when I went to my first couple of parties when I was first getting sober, I took NA beers with me, like in my back pocket, and then also I think my biggest thing though is really just having my husband with me everywhere I've traveled. So it's always been, he knows that I'm not doing it. And so together we're able to, and so the biggest thing has probably been like, airports, and like in an airplane, cause that's just stressful. And that's a good time where I want to have a drink, but yeah, I think, yeah.
Yeah. I love what you brought up about the exit plan. That is so crucial. I still do this to this day, 6 years in, because you can get trapped in a situation where you're at an event and now everyone is on a different level than you. And it's not that it's triggering, but it's uncomfortable and it's not a healthy environment for us to be in. And also it's probably, past 10 p.m. and time for us to go to bed. So yeah, always having a ride home or, Uber, or some type of plan to get out of the situation that you're in when it gets to a certain level. And
Yeah.
the airport thing, I totally know what you're talking about. The only cravings I've ever had have been in the airport when I've been traveling. And they are just like little thoughts flying through the air and then they're gone. And I think it's where I used to drink a lot, right? In an airport. And then the stress of traveling. And it's just everywhere you look is a bar with people drinking, like even 9 a.m. at the airport, Yeah. So just knowing that to have those intrusive thoughts is really normal, even long-term sobriety. Just don't attach yourself to that thought.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, we have made it to the lightning round of our episode. So I asked the same 5 questions to each guest. So the first question is, you're given 3 options. Would you shark dive, bungee jump, or skydive?
I'm skydiving.
Okay. All right. Have you done it before?
No, no. And I don't know if I would do it, but I feel like once I get up there, they push you anyway. So I feel like that'd be easiest, because bungee jump, I would rather, no, I can't bungee jump.
Yeah. I'm with you.
Skydiving.
Yeah, I don't think I could ever. Maybe like tandem bungee, like if someone jumped off with me, but I could never just jump. I'm with you.
Yeah.
Number 2, you're a music guy. So you're in a simulation. Every time you walk into a room, the same song plays. What's your song?
I'm going to go with Nothing Else Matters by Metallica.
Okay. All right. I like it.
Yeah.
All right. They're still touring.
They are. I
Yeah.
know. I don't like their new stuff, if I'm being honest, but their old stuff got me through a lot. And that song's not crazy. It's obviously a nice little ballad. I don't know. Any song forever would be a long time, but if anything, I might as well pick that.
Yeah, no, I love it. I love some screamo. I have a little rage in me,
Yeah.
a little bit. Number 3, what's your favorite Disney movie?
Ooh, probably Finding Nemo.
That's a good one. No one's ever said that.
Kind of want to say Aladdin because I loved Robin Williams, but overall, I think Finding Nemo.
Good. Love it. Number 4, what is something you're obsessed with?
Weird food, like any kind of like crazy foreign food, like the squid flavored chips you can get in Japan, or like the weird, like just weird stuff. Like if any of that, like if it's at the store, like a limited edition, whatever, like I'm buying it, I'm trying it. Yeah.
Love it. So my best friend Erica, shout out to Erica, she's half Japanese and she is obsessed with weird food, just like you. And she's always trying to get me to eat this weird food. And I won't do it. I am very scared of weird food. We went to Chinatown in New York like 2 weeks ago, and they were ordering like peanut butter noodles, like really strange food. And I just ate some crackers. So I need to be more adventurous with my food.
Yeah, give Erica my number. I love that. I love her. Love her already. I don't even know her, but yeah, I love that.
She'll take you to Japan, to all the crazy places there. Number 5, what does freedom mean to you?
Freedom, and I'm going to kind of go back on what I had said earlier, but just about being at peace. Freedom is not having that on my shoulders, not carrying around the secrets. I am just able to be authentically me now. I think living out loud is super important, recovering out loud, because there is people that are suffering in silence. And then when I was suffering in silence and didn't know where to go, those people I looked up to, and I even reached out to some of them and messaged them and asked them how they did things. But I wasn't really serious, nor did I ever think I could talk to my husband about it, so I never did. But those people, to this day, I mean, I thank them because they at least got my mind thinking, like, if they can do it, maybe I can. I just never tried, So I think just being authentically yourself and not having no apologies to anybody, just
That's a terrific, terrific answer. I loved that so much. I can't thank you enough for coming on. You're going to help so many people by sharing your story. So thank you from the bottom of my heart. And I will see you in a month in Montana.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure. And yes, countdown to Bozeman is on.
Yay. All right. Bye.